Have you ever tried listening to the news in English and felt completely lost? Like the words are flying past you too fast, and even if you catch a few, the full story just disappears? If that sounds familiar, trust me, you're not the only one. Many learners face this problem, and today we're going to solve it together. Welcome to the Best English Podcast. I'm Sarah, and I'm really happy you're here with me. If you want more lessons like this, simple, practical, and useful, don't forget to like this episode, subscribe, and share it with a friend who's also learning English. Because the more you surround yourself with English, the faster your progress will be. Now, why do I say the news is such a powerful tool for improving your listening? And if it's so powerful, why does it often feel so difficult? It sounds simple, right? News is everywhere, it's free, and people talk about it every day. So it should be the perfect way to practice listening. And it is, but only if you understand how to approach it. The truth is, the news is difficult for most learners for three main reasons. First, the speed. News presenters speak fast because they need to share a lot of information in a short time. Second, the vocabulary. News stories often use words you don't hear in daily conversation, political terms, business words, or formal expressions. And third, the style. News is written to sound serious and professional, not casual, so it can feel very different from the English you learned in your textbook. But here's something important. Just because it feels hard doesn't mean it's impossible. In fact, the very things that make news challenging, the speed, the vocabulary, the style, are the things that will help your English grow faster once you learn how to handle them. So the real question is not, is the news too difficult for me? The real question is, how can I train my brain to use the news as practice instead of feeling lost? Let's break down that big question. How can you actually train your brain to use the news as practice instead of feeling lost? The first step is changing how you listen. Many learners sit down, play a news clip, and try to understand every single word. But here's the secret. You don't need to catch everything. Even native speakers don't remember every detail of the news. They focus on the main idea. So your first goal is not perfect understanding. Your first goal is, what's this story about? Here's a simple way to practice. Choose a short news clip, just 1 or 2 minutes. Listen once without subtitles or transcripts. Don't pause, don't stop. Just let it play. Then ask yourself one question. Can I explain the main topic in one sentence? For example, it was about new technology in schools, or it was about a storm in Florida. If you can answer like that, congratulations. You already achieved step 1. Now step 2, listen again. This time, pay attention to keywords, the important words that carry the story. Words like government, increase, climate, research. These are the clues that build the story in your head. You don't need to know all the small words. Skip them. Focus on the big ones. And here's a trick. Write down 3 to 5 words you hear. Don't worry if your spelling is wrong. Later, look them up, check their meaning, and see how they fit into the story. Over time, your brain will learn to connect these keywords into bigger ideas. Finally, step 3. Repeat the same clip tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. At first, it will feel boring, like, I already heard this. But that's exactly the point. Repetition makes your brain faster. The second time, you'll hear details you missed. The third time, you might start predicting what words come next. And that is real progress. But let's be honest, listening alone isn't always enough. You might still feel like the news is just sound, not meaning. So what can you do to turn sound into real, living English that stays in your memory? Here's the real challenge many learners face. When they listen to English news, it all feels like a wave of sound. Fast, heavy, non-stop. You might hear the words, but they don't stay. They disappear before you can connect them into meaning. And that can be so frustrating because you know the words individually, but when they're spoken quickly, they feel like a blur. So, how do we change that? How do we make sound become meaning, something you understand and remember? The answer is active listening with support. Imagine this. You watch a news clip without any help first, just to test yourself. Then you bring in a transcript or subtitles, not to read the whole thing word by word, but to guide your ear. The transcript is like training wheels on a bicycle. It gives you balance until you can ride on your own. Here's a step-by-step method you can try. 1. First listen without text. Don't pause, don't rewind, just get the general topic. Second listen with subtitles or a transcript. This time, notice where you got lost. Maybe there was a fast phrase or a word you didn't catch. Write it down. Third listen without text again. Now, test yourself. Can you hear that phrase more clearly this time? By doing this, you train your brain to recognize sounds you couldn't before. At first, you'll feel like you're repeating too much. But trust me, that repetition is what changes listening from noise into meaning. Another powerful tool is shadowing. Have you heard of it? Shadowing means you listen to a short piece of the news, just a sentence or two, and then immediately repeat it out loud, trying to copy the speaker's rhythm and intonation. You don't need to be perfect. The goal is to train your mouth and your ears at the same time. When you speak along, you're not just hearing the words, you're feeling them, and that makes them stick. For example, imagine the news says, "The government announced new measures to improve education." You pause, repeat it aloud, copy the stress on announced and education. After a few tries, your brain starts to recognize that sentence much faster, and when a similar sentence comes up in another news clip, you'll notice it instantly. But maybe you're thinking, "Sarah, that sounds like a lot of work. Do I really need to do all of this?" Here's the truth. You don't have to do it every day with every story. Even if you choose just one small clip a few times a week, this method works. The news is perfect for this because it repeats common structures. Experts say, officials reported, a study shows. The more you shadow these phrases, the more automatic they become. And don't forget to connect the story to yourself. This is where many learners miss an opportunity. If the news is about the environment, ask yourself, what's happening in my country? If it's about technology, think, do I use something similar? By making the news personal, your brain cares more, and when your brain cares, it remembers. Now, here's something interesting. Many learners tell me, I listen, I repeat, but I still forget quickly. And I always ask them one question, are you listening actively, or are you just hearing sounds? Because listening actively means you're not just a receiver, you're a participant. You predict what comes next, you compare it to what you know, you even ask yourself questions while listening. For example, why did they use that word? What's the main idea of this sentence? Do I agree with this news? This kind of active mindset transforms the experience. Suddenly, you're not fighting the news, you're working with it. And when you approach listening this way, the blur starts to clear up. Words turn into ideas, sentences turn into stories, and stories are something your brain can hold on to. But there's still one problem many people face. Even with transcripts, even with shadowing, they sometimes feel overwhelmed because the news is so fast and so formal. So the big question becomes, how can you keep practicing with the news without feeling burned out or discouraged? Here's the truth. Even if you know the right techniques, transcripts, shadowing, active listening, it doesn't always feel easy to keep going. Some days you're motivated, and some days you just feel tired. You open a news clip, and after 30 seconds you want to give up. Why does this happen? Because the news in English is fast, sometimes formal, and often filled with information that feels distant from your life. And if your brain doesn't see the value, it doesn't want to stay focused. That's why staying motivated is just as important as the method itself. So how do we keep the habit alive? Let's break it down. First, choose the right content. Not all news is equal. If you try to listen to complicated political debates every day, you'll get bored or stressed. Instead, start with topics that you care about: health, technology, sports, science, culture. For example, if you're interested in travel, listen to a story about tourism or airlines. If you love football, watch sports highlights in English. When the topic matters to you, The language feels less heavy, and your brain is more willing to stay with it. Second, make it short. Many learners think they must listen to long reports to improve, but in reality, short is more powerful. A 2 to 3 minute clip is perfect because you can repeat it several times. Imagine practicing one short clip for a whole week. You'll notice big progress by the end. And when you see progress, you stay motivated. Third, set small goals. Don't say, "I'll understand all the news this month." That's too big. Instead, say, "This week, I'll catch the main idea of every news clip I watch." Or, "Today, I'll write down 3 new expressions from the news and try to use them in a sentence." Small goals create small wins, and small wins give you energy to keep going. Fourth, celebrate your progress. Many learners don't notice how much they improve because they don't measure it. Try this. Listen to a news clip today and save it. Then listen to the same clip again after 3 weeks. You'll be surprised at how much more you understand. That feeling of progress is a huge motivator. It shows you that the work is paying off. Fifth, mix active and passive listening. You don't have to study the news every time. Some days, it's okay to just play English news in the background while cooking, cleaning, or walking. That's passive listening, and it helps your brain get used to the rhythm of English. Then, on other days, you sit down and really focus. Repeat, shadow, write notes. This balance keeps the process fresh, so you don't get bored. Let me give you a quick example. One of my learners, Luis, started with only 5 minutes of BBC News per day. He told me, "At first, I only understood 1 or 2 sentences, but he kept a journal of what he heard. After 2 months, he said, 'Now I understand the main story, and sometimes even details.'" What changed? Not the speed of the news, his ears changed. His brain adapted. And the reason he didn't give up was because he made it short, personal, and consistent. And here's another important part of motivation. Make it social. Don't learn alone if you can help it. Share the clip with a friend, discuss it, or even post a comment online in English. When you know someone else is part of the process, you feel more responsible, and you also feel encouraged. But let's be honest, even with all these tricks, there will be days you feel stuck. You'll think, "I'm not improving. I still miss too many words." This feeling is normal, but it's also dangerous because it makes people quit too early, and most learners don't realize they're improving little by little, even when they can't see it yet. So, how do we deal with those days? How do we keep going when progress feels invisible? That's where we need to talk about building confidence, the mindset that tells you, "I can do this, even if it feels hard right now." Here's something most learners don't realize. Your ability to understand English news isn't only about vocabulary or grammar, it's about confidence. If your mind says, "This is too hard, I'll never get it," you've already lost before the listening even starts. But if your mind says, "It's okay if I don't catch everything. I just need the main idea," suddenly the task feels lighter and your brain actually performs better. Think about it. When you listen in fear, your body becomes tense. You stop breathing normally. You panic when you miss a word, and then you miss the next 5 words too. But when you listen with confidence, you stay calm. You let the unknown words pass, and you still follow the story. That's the real difference between a learner who grows and a learner who gives up. So how can we build this kind of confidence? Let's make it practical. 1. Change your expectation. The biggest mistake learners make is thinking they must understand 100% of the news. But even native speakers don't do that. When you watch the news in your own language, sometimes you miss details too, right? And yet you still understand the story. That's the goal in English. Not perfection, but comprehension. If you catch the headline, the main idea, and 2 or 3 key details, you're already successful. 2. Give yourself permission to miss words. Here's a powerful mindset trick. When you start a news clip, tell yourself, it's okay if I miss things. I'll still learn something useful. This small mental shift removes pressure and helps you stay focused on what matters instead of what you miss. 3. Practice with repetition. Every time you listen to the same clip again, your brain notices details you didn't hear before. This repetition builds confidence because you realize, oh, I can understand more now instead of feeling stuck. You feel progress. 4. Speak what you hear. Confidence grows when you take action. After listening, try to explain the news in your own words, even if it's simple. Say, today's story is about, the problem is, the solution is. This shows you that you understood more than you thought. 5. Celebrate small wins. Did you understand one sentence today that you couldn't understand yesterday? That's progress. Did you recognize a phrase you learned last week? That's success. Each small win adds up, and confidence grows step by step. Let me give you an example. One of my students, Maria, always felt nervous listening to CNN clips. She told me, I understand nothing, Sarah. But when I asked her to explain just the main idea after listening, she said, it's about the weather. There's a storm coming. That's not nothing. That's comprehension. When she realized she was already succeeding in small ways, her confidence grew. Confidence is not built overnight. It's built every time you give yourself permission to try, to fail a little, and to try again. And the beautiful thing is, once you have confidence, learning becomes much faster. Why? Because you stop running from the challenge. You face it. But here's a deeper question. Even if you build confidence, how can you make sure your listening is not just practice, but also practical? How can you take the news and actually use it to improve your speaking and thinking in English, not just your listening? That's the step we need to explore next. Here's the truth. Listening alone is not enough. You can spend hours with English news playing in your ears, but if you never turn those sounds into your own words, the progress will always feel incomplete. Listening is the input, but speaking is the output. And without output, you never know how much you've really learned. Think about it like this. If you watch a cooking show every day, you'll understand how recipes work. But unless you actually step into the kitchen and cook, the knowledge stays in your head. It never becomes a real skill. The same happens with English. News listening gives you fresh vocabulary, natural phrases, and real-life context. But until you use them, they remain passive. So how can you connect listening and speaking? Let's make it simple and practical. 1. Retell the story in your own words. After you finish a short news clip, pause. Don't rush to the next one. Instead, ask yourself, what was the main idea? What happened? Why does it matter? Then, say it out loud, even if you only use simple sentences. Example, there was a fire in the city. Many people had to leave their homes. The firefighters worked all night. Simple, clear, effective. 2. Use key words and phrases. When you notice an interesting phrase in the news, something like economic slowdown or rising tensions, try to use it right away in your own sentence. For example, there's an economic slowdown in my country too. This small practice makes vocabulary active, not passive. 3. Shadow the speaker. Choose a short section of the clip, maybe 1 or 2 sentences. Listen carefully, then repeat right after the speaker, matching their rhythm and intonation. This builds not only pronunciation but also speaking confidence, because you're training your mouth to move the way English really sounds. 4. Record yourself. This might feel strange at first. but it works. Record your retelling of the news, then listen back. Ask yourself, do I sound clear? Did I use the right words? The point isn't perfection, it's awareness. And with awareness comes improvement. 5. Share with someone. If you have a study partner, tell them the news story as if you were the reporter. If you don't, imagine you're explaining it to a friend. The more you practice explaining, the easier it becomes to transform listening into natural speaking. Here's the beautiful part. The more you speak from what you listen to, the deeper the memory becomes. You're not only training your ears, you're training your tongue, your brain, and your confidence at the same time. But let's face it, sometimes speaking feels scary. What if you make mistakes? What if you don't know the exact word? These fears are real, and they often stop learners from trying. So the real question is, how can you break through that fear and actually enjoy speaking, even when it's not perfect? Let's be honest, one of the biggest reasons learners avoid speaking is not lack of knowledge, it's fear. Fear of sounding silly, fear of making mistakes, fear of being judged, and this fear can become so heavy that even after hours of listening practice, you stay silent. But here's the truth. Every fluent speaker you admire has been through that same fear. No one starts speaking perfectly. In fact, mistakes are not just normal, they are necessary. Think about how children learn their first language. They mispronounce words, mix up grammar, even invent their own funny phrases. And yet, nobody stops them. Their mistakes are part of the process. So how can you, as an English learner, deal with this fear? Let's break it down into steps you can actually use. 1. Start small, without pressure. You don't need to give a big speech. Begin with one sentence after listening to a news clip. Even something as short as, "The president gave a speech today." That's already speaking. Over time, those small steps build real confidence. 2. Lower your expectations. The goal is not perfection. The goal is communication. Even if you make a mistake, if the other person understands you, then you have succeeded. And with practice, accuracy naturally improves. 3. Focus on progress, not failure. Instead of asking, "How many mistakes did I make?" ask yourself, "What did I say better than last time?" Maybe you used one new word. Maybe your pronunciation was clearer. Celebrate that progress. 4. Practice in safe spaces. You don't always need an audience. Talk to yourself while walking. Retell the news in front of a mirror. Record your voice on your phone. These small private moments help you practice without pressure. 5. Reframe mistakes as lessons. When you say something wrong and realize it, that mistake becomes a teacher. You will remember the correction much longer than if you only studied a rule in a book. Now imagine this. Instead of feeling nervous, you begin to enjoy speaking. You look at mistakes not as failures, but as proof that you are learning, experimenting, and growing. Fear slowly loses its power because confidence grows each time you open your mouth. But of course, fear isn't the only challenge. There's another problem many learners face when practicing with news. The stories are often filled with difficult or advanced words that don't always appear in daily conversations. How do you handle that without feeling lost or frustrated? Here's something every learner notices quickly. News reports are full of big, sometimes formal, words you rarely hear in daily conversation. For example, instead of said, a reporter might use stated or announced. Instead of people, they might say citizens or residents. At first, this makes listening feel like a puzzle with missing pieces. But here's the good news. You don't need to understand every word to understand the story. In fact, focusing too much on every difficult word can make you lose the bigger picture. What really matters is learning to catch the core meaning. So, how can you deal with advanced or unusual vocabulary without feeling stuck? Let's break it down. 1. Learn to notice repeated words. In news, certain words appear again and again. Government, report, officials, economy, crisis, climate, health. When you see these words often, make a list and learn them. These words are your anchors. They help you follow stories more easily. 2. Guess from context. You don't always need a dictionary. For example, if the news says, "The country is facing an economic downturn with fewer jobs and slower growth," even if you don't know the word downturn, the rest of the sentence explains it. You understand it's something negative about the economy. 3. Learn the difference between essential and extra. Not every word is necessary to understand the story. If you hear, "The minister emphasized the importance of immediate reform," the key words are minister and reform. Even if you misemphasized, you still understand the idea. 4. Use word families. When you learn one new word, try to connect it to related words. For example, decide, decision, decisive. This way, when you hear variations in the news, you're not surprised. 5. Build a news vocabulary notebook. Write down only the most useful and repeated words you hear in reports. Don't try to learn everything. Focus on high-frequency words, and you'll soon realize that many stories share the same vocabulary set. Now here's a powerful reminder. The goal is not to understand 100%. Even native speakers sometimes miss words in the news. The goal is to understand enough to follow the story and feel confident about it. And once you know how to manage difficult vocabulary, the next big step is learning how to connect news listening with your speaking practice. So you're not just listening, but also using what you hear. So far, we've talked about how to approach news listening without stress, how to catch the main idea, how to use context for difficult vocabulary, and how to build confidence step by step. But let's be honest, listening alone is not enough. You could listen to hours and hours of English news, but if you never use what you hear, your fluency won't really grow. The real progress happens when listening and speaking come together. Think about it this way. The news gives you fresh, real English every single day. It's like a free classroom waiting for you. But the secret is not just to consume the news, it's to interact with it. So how can you do that? Let's go step by step. 1. Retell the story in simple English. After you listen to a short report, pause and try to explain what you just heard, out loud. Don't worry about being perfect. Just say it in your own words. For example, if the news says, "A powerful storm hit the eastern coast, causing damage to homes and forcing hundreds to evacuate," you could retell it like this. "There was a big storm. Many houses were damaged, and people had to leave." See? Much simpler, but you're practicing fluency. 2. React to the news. Don't just repeat facts. Add your opinion. Say, "I think the government should help those people quickly." Or, "That's really sad. I hope it doesn't happen again." This is exactly how you make English personal and natural. 3. Use the one sentence a day method. Choose one news story each day and write or say just one good sentence about it. Example, "The new law will change how students study at school." It sounds small, but over time, you'll build stronger grammar and vocabulary naturally. 4. Practice shadowing with emotion. We talked before about repeating after the reporter. Now take it further. Copy not only the words, but also the tone, the seriousness, the excitement, the urgency. This is how you train your brain to sound more natural, not robotic. 5. Share the news in conversation. This is the ultimate step. Take what you heard and bring it into real conversations with a teacher, a study partner, or even a voice message to yourself. For example, "Did you hear about the new space mission? They're planning to go to the moon again." Suddenly, you're not just a learner. You're someone who uses English to talk about real events. And here's the most important thing. When you combine listening and speaking, something changes in your brain. You stop being a passive learner and start becoming an active communicator. That's the moment fluency starts to grow faster than ever before. So, the next time you listen to the news, don't just hit play and sit back. Grab a notebook, pause after each short section, retell, react, shadow, and share. Make it part of your daily routine. Because fluency doesn't come from listening alone. It comes from using what you listen to, turning passive input into active output. That's how the news stops being just difficult English and becomes one of the most powerful tools for your growth. And if you stay consistent with this method, one day you'll look back and realize, wow, I can follow the news, I can talk about it, and I actually sound confident. That's the fluency breakthrough you're looking for. So, my challenge for you is this. Tonight, choose one short news story, listen to it, and then retell it in your own words. Don't wait for tomorrow. Start now. Your fluency will thank you later. And remember, you don't have to do this journey alone. If this episode helped you, share it with a friend who's also learning English. You might make their day easier too. If you'd like more lessons like this, you'll find plenty waiting for you here. Just explore the other episodes. We've built them to guide you step by step. And if you want to keep improving every day, stay with us, subscribe, and let's continue learning together. The more you listen, the faster your English will grow.